There's a moment after heartbreak that doesn't come with tears. It comes with silence. A quiet so thick it feels like the air itself has weight. It's in that silence that something ancient stirs, not a question, but a knowing. What if this wasn't just suffering? What if this was a design? A disruption, yes, but a necessary one. Because the truth is, the universe never breaks your heart to destroy you. It does it to wake you up. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And he was right, because no one wakes up in comfort. We awaken in the rubble, when the floor collapses, when the version of life we believed in crumbles in our hands. It's only then that we begin to truly see. Pain isn't just an emotion, it's a portal. It forces you to sit with the parts of yourself you've spent years ignoring, the insecurities you dressed up as confidence, the illusions you called love, the patterns you called fate. Heartbreak doesn't just hurt, it strips. It peels back the surface until only the raw self remains, the one that's been whispering beneath the noise all along. And the most devastating truth is also the most liberating one. The pain was always the message. The discomfort was always the direction. But we avoid pain until we have no choice but to face it. That's why the universe uses heartbreak, because only something that personal, that piercing, has the power to burn through the noise of habit and denial. This isn't punishment, it's purification. And while it may not feel like it now, something inside you is being rearranged. What breaks is not just the relationship, it's the identity that clung to it. The version of you that settled, that stayed quiet, that needed approval to feel whole, that version is dying. And yes, it hurts. But what's being born in its place will thank you for this moment. Because heartbreak doesn't mark the end. It marks the beginning of something far more real, something awake, something you. There's a silence after heartbreak that isn't peace. It's the sound of illusion collapsing. The fantasy ends, not with a scream, but with a whisper that says, "This wasn't what I thought it was." That's the moment everything unravels. Not just the love, but the story you wrapped around it. The story that made you feel safe, the idea that love meant forever, that someone else would complete you, that control could shield you from chaos. Gone. In one moment, everything you trusted becomes unfamiliar. And yet, this is precisely where awakening begins. Jung spoke of the split between the conscious and unconscious self, the part of us that acts and the part that hides. Heartbreak doesn't just hurt the heart, it splits the psyche. It reveals what was buried, the compromises you made to be loved, the red flags you colored over with hope, the parts of you dimmed to stay close to someone who couldn't hold your light. This is the shattering not just of a relationship, but of the illusion that you were ever truly seen within it. Most people don't love you. They love the idea of you, the version that fits into their mold. But illusion is comforting. It gives structure to chaos, even if that structure is built on denial. You told yourself they were your person. You imagined the future. You believed that what you felt was real, and maybe parts of it were. But the rest was a projection, a mirror you needed to hold up to feel whole. And now it's broken. And that, paradoxically, is a gift. Because when the illusion shatters, what remains is the truth. No filters, no fantasies. Just the raw, aching honesty of who you are, what you want, and what you can no longer pretend to accept. It's brutal clarity. But clarity, even when it hurts, is a kind of mercy. You don't awaken in fantasy. You awaken in truth, in loss, in the sharp, cold light of what is. And from that place, for the first time, you have the chance to meet yourself. Not the version shaped for someone else, but the one that was waiting all along. There's a part of you that heartbreak drags into the light, kicking, screaming, unready. It's not the pain of loss that shakes you most. It's the mirror it holds up. Because in the ruins, you see yourself more clearly than ever before, and not just the polished self you showed the world. Number. You see what you've buried, the neediness dressed as independence, the insecurity hidden behind caretaking, the resentment masked as selflessness. This is what Jung called the shadow, the unconscious side of the self that holds all we reject, deny, or repress. Heartbreak doesn't create the shadow, it reveals it. When everything falls apart, your usual defenses collapse with it. You no longer have the distraction of love or the illusion of control to protect you from yourself. The roles you played, the persona you upheld, it all unravels. And in the aftermath, you're forced to confront the you that existed beneath the performance. The one who stayed in the relationship out of fear, the one who clung tighter when things began to fall apart, the one who begged silently, not for love, but for approval. This is not weakness, this is truth. And while it may feel like a breakdown, it's actually a breakthrough. The shadow is not your enemy, it's your invitation. Because until you face it, you'll keep chasing love not to share your wholeness, but to hide your wounds. Heartbreak doesn't just expose what others did to you, it exposes what you allowed, what you ignored, what you feared to see. And this moment, as brutal as it feels, is sacred. Because it's here, in the middle of your emotional collapse, that the unconscious becomes conscious. And Jung reminds us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The pain you feel right now isn't senseless, it's precision. It's the universe saying, look, deeper, still. Only by facing the shadow can you begin to integrate it, and only through integration can you ever truly heal. This isn't punishment, it's revelation. It's the truth arriving, uninvited, but exactly on time. Before the heartbreak, you believed you knew who you were, the partner, the giver, the one who held it all together. You wore those roles like armor. You thought love meant holding on, fixing, saving. You believed that if you gave enough, softened enough, stayed long enough, you could make it work. That was the ego talking. Not out of arrogance, but out of fear. The ego doesn't crave connection, it craves control. And heartbreak? It shatters that control with one clean, devastating blow. This is the moment the ego cracks open, the moment the I you built, carefully, painstakingly, starts to dissolve. And that dissolution feels like death. But it's not the death of you, it's the death of who you thought you had to be. That identity you wrapped around a relationship, the one that told you your worth depended on being loved, needed, chosen, gone. The partner, the martyr, the savior, the good one. All of them fall. And what's left is terrifyingly empty, but also pure. Jung taught that the ego is only one part of the self, and not the most truthful one. It's the part that tries to manage life, to maintain image, to stay safe through control. But control isn't safety, and love isn't something you can hold together with willpower. When the relationship ends and the role collapses, you come face to face with a terrifying yet liberating truth. You never had control, not over them, not over love, not even over yourself, not the real self, the one you kept hidden behind approval and perfection. Heartbreak strips the ego of its illusions, and in the wreckage, you begin to see reality, not as you hoped it would be, but as it is. You see your pain without performance, your needs without shame, your worth without conditions. This is not failure, this is transformation, and no transformation begins with certainty. It begins with unraveling. So if you feel lost, hollow, exposed, good, it means the mask is gone, and now you have a chance to meet yourself, not as a role, but as a soul. The ego may be cracking, but the truth is pouring in, and in that truth, a new self is quietly being born, one that no longer needs to be chosen, because it has already chosen itself. We like to think love will save us, that the right person will fill the emptiness, calm the chaos, give meaning to what's been fractured. But that's the story we were told, not the truth. Because love doesn't heal what you haven't faced. It reflects it. It holds up a mirror to the very parts of you you're still running from. And heartbreak? That's what happens when the mirror shatters and you're left alone with the reflection you tried to avoid. We don't fall for people by accident. We fall into the arms of those who awaken something unresolved. That person who didn't choose you, who dismissed your needs, who abandoned you, they weren't a mistake. They were a messenger, a living embodiment of your unhealed wounds. And while it hurts to admit, the love we often chase is the validation we've refused to give ourselves. We look for partners to affirm what we secretly doubt. Am I enough? Am I lovable? Do I matter? Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But it's not just irritation. It's infatuation, too, that desperate longing, that need to be seen, held, wanted. It feels like love, but often it's something deeper. It's a plea to be whole. And when they leave or reject you, it's not just their absence that hurts. It's the collapse of the belief that they were the solution, that they were the piece of you that would finally make everything right. But here's the truth. No one can love you into wholeness. Because love that heals doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself again and again, even when it feels impossible, especially then. So the next time you find yourself aching for someone to come back, ask yourself, what were they reflecting? What truth about yourself did they awaken that you didn't want to see? Because they weren't the answer. They were the question. And the answer has always been inside you, waiting to be heard, waiting to be loved, not by them, but by you. There's a silence that comes after heartbreak that feels like falling. Not the kind of fall that catches you, the kind where there's no bottom in sight, no solid ground, just you and the endless weight of everything breaking open inside. It feels like failure, but it isn't. It's descent, sacred, brutal, necessary descent. Carl Jung once said, "The tree that would grow to heaven must send its roots to hell." And that's what this moment is, rooting, not upwards, but downward, into grief, into loss, into the darkness you've spent your life trying to avoid. This fall isn't the end. It's the beginning of depth, the soil from which your next self will rise. In this place, there are no distractions, no roles to play, no one to impress, just pain and the rawness of being alone with it. And yet, this is the threshold. This is where transformation begins. Because before you can rise, you have to sink into what's real, not the story, not the fantasy, but the truth, the ache, the silence, the stillness that says, this is what's left when the illusion is gone. It feels like dying. But it's the death of what no longer serves you, the death of denial, of dependency, of dreams that were never yours to begin with. And like all deaths, it makes space for something new, not a new relationship, not a quick fix, but a rebirth, a return to yourself. Most people try to avoid this part. They rush into distractions, rebound connections, numbing habits, anything to avoid the fall. But what you resist will keep returning until you finally let it swallow you. And when you do, something strange happens. You stop running. You start listening. And the silence, once terrifying, becomes a kind of teacher. You start to understand that this pain has shape. It has meaning. It's sculpting something in you never thought you'd become. Stronger, clearer, awake. So let yourself fall. Not because it's easy, but because it's honest. Because in this descent, something sacred is taking root. And when you rise, and you will, it won't be with borrowed wings. It'll be from your own becoming, from a depth no one can take from you. Have you ever noticed how the heartbreaks start to look the same? Different faces, different names, same pain. Like déjà vu with a sharper edge. You tell yourself this one's different, but it ends in the same place. Emptiness, self-doubt, silence. That's not coincidence. That's curriculum. Because the universe doesn't just break your heart, it teaches through it. And if the lesson goes unlearned, it repeats, louder, deeper, until you finally listen. Carl Jung believed that what we don't make conscious, we live out as fate. And that's exactly what these repeated heartbreaks are: unconscious repetition, patterns passed down through generations, inherited trauma dressed up as personal choice. We date our wounds. We fall in love with the familiar ache of our childhood. We chase unavailable partners because that's the only form of love we ever learned to accept. We confuse emotional chaos with passion, and each time we say, "This time will be different," without ever becoming different ourselves. The truth is, you're not being punished. You're being shown. These heartbreaks, each one, is a mirror, a portal, a repetition not to torment you, but to awaken you, until you finally recognize the pattern and say, "No more." That's the moment the cycle begins to break, not when someone chooses you, not when they finally change, but when you do. When you no longer abandon yourself to avoid being abandoned. When you no longer stay quiet just to keep the peace. When you finally realize the pattern isn't outside you, it's inside. And the moment you choose differently, everything shifts. Because love isn't supposed to be a wound you keep reopening. It's meant to be a place where you arrive whole. But to get there, you have to stop calling trauma destiny. You have to see the role you've played, not with blame, but with clarity. Because once you see it, you can change it. And when you do, the universe no longer has to repeat the lesson. The pattern breaks. And you, finally, break through. There's a moment in heartbreak when the pain stops screaming and starts whispering. When the sharpness dulls and something else begins to rise. Not just survival, but understanding. That's the turning point. The moment grief becomes something else entirely. Not just weight, but fuel. Not just sorrow, but transformation. That's emotional alchemy. Jung taught that we do not become whole by suppressing what hurts, but by facing it, integrating it, owning it. And that is what heartbreak demands. Not avoidance, but courage. Not distraction, but presence. This is not about getting over it. This is about moving through it, allowing the pain to shape you, not scar you. Because pain, when faced honestly, doesn't destroy. It refines. The problem is, we're conditioned to numb, to scroll, to run, to drink, to fix, to replace. Anything to not feel. But transformation doesn't happen in escape. It happens in the fire. When you sit in the middle of the ache and ask, "What are you here to teach me?" That's alchemy, not turning pain into joy, but turning pain into wisdom, into clarity, into boundaries, into truth. Every emotion you suppress becomes a shadow, and what you bury doesn't disappear. It waits. It shows up in your relationships, your decisions, your fears. But when you finally stop running, when you feel the grief fully, when you let the tears fall without trying to stop them, that's when the energy begins to shift. You're no longer a victim of your emotions. You become the vessel through which they evolve. This is sacred work. It's not loud. It's not glamorous. It often looks like long nights, unanswered texts, deep breaths in the dark. But in that quiet labor, something begins to change. You begin to change. Because the pain that once ruled you becomes the fire that rebuilds you. So don't rush to fix it. Don't look away. This is the medicine. Let it hurt. Let it hollow you. And then let it fill you with something truer. Because heartbreak is not the end of love. It's the beginning of real love. The kind that starts within. The kind that no longer needs to be proven. Only lived. After heartbreak, the silence can feel unbearable. The bed feels too big. The air feels too still. No more texts to wake up to. No more voice to anchor your evenings. Just you. And a silence that seems to stretch for miles. It feels like punishment. Like something's been taken. But what if that emptiness isn't loss? It's space. What if that stillness isn't exile? It's sanctuary. We've been taught to fear loneliness, to fill it like a void, to treat it like a flaw. But Jung knew better. He said that loneliness is not the absence of people, it's the absence of connection to your own truth. And the strange gift of heartbreak is that it forces you into solitude, not to hurt you, but to bring you back to yourself. to return you to the place you've been avoiding, your own soul. Because in the absence of distraction, the real work begins. The noise fades. The pretending stops. There's no one left to impress, no role left to play. You're left with your essence, raw, stripped, unfiltered. And yes, at first, it's terrifying. But stay long enough and something sacred begins to stir. You start to hear your own voice again, not the one that was shaped by needing to be loved, but the one that knows exactly who you are when no one's watching. Loneliness isn't punishment, it's preparation. It's the universe making room, not just for someone else, but for you. The real you, the one who doesn't shrink to be accepted, the one who doesn't chase what doesn't feed her soul. In this quiet, you're not just recovering, you're remembering. So don't rush to fill the silence. Don't run from it. Sit in it. Let it cleanse you. Let it teach you that peace isn't found in another person's presence. It's found in your own. Because the woman who learns to find comfort in her solitude becomes untouchable, not because she no longer wants love, but because she no longer needs to abandon herself to receive it. There's something about what's missing that speaks louder than what's there. The silence after goodbye, the empty space where someone once stood, the quiet in the room that used to carry laughter, footsteps, love. It's haunting, but it's also revealing. Because when someone leaves, they take their noise with them. And in that absence, something begins to awaken. Presence often comforts, but absence confronts. It makes you look closer, not at them, but at yourself. And what you see there, in the mirror of emptiness, is who you are without the scaffolding of someone else's attention. And that's where truth lives, not in the echo of shared memories, but in the silence that remains after they're gone. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. And wholeness cannot happen while you're clinging to pieces that don't belong to you. Absence strips you bare. It takes away the noise, the performance, the safety of routine. And in that raw space, realizations start to surface. You begin to see how much of yourself you gave away just to feel loved. You notice how much energy went into proving your worth, into being enough. And suddenly the silence doesn't just feel empty, it feels honest. Because here's the truth, you can't hear your soul when the world is too loud. And heartbreak, painful as it is the one thing that turns the volume down. The texts stop. The plans disappear. The constant feedback loop is gone. And now it's just you and the stillness. And in that stillness, you begin to remember who you were before the noise. Don't underestimate what absence gives you. It's not just a void. It's a mirror, a lesson, a reclamation. Because when you stop searching for answers in someone else, you realize the questions were always yours to begin with. And in answering them, you don't just heal, you awaken, not into what was, but into what could be, into who you've always been, underneath it all. Heartbreak doesn't just end something. It begins something else, something far more important. After the grief, after the silence, after the slow unraveling of who you thought you were, something begins to stir inside you, not a return to the old, a return to something truer. This is the rebirth, not loud, not sudden, but undeniable, like spring after the longest winter. You don't rise from heartbreak the same. You can't. Because the version of you that clung, that compromised, that twisted herself into something lovable, that self no longer fits. She served her purpose. She tried. She learned. And now she's being laid to rest. In her place stands someone new, someone clearer, someone whose boundaries are no longer walls of fear, but lines of self-respect. Someone who no longer asks, "What do I need to become to be loved?" but instead, "What do I need to stop abandoning in myself?" Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and that becoming doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in collapse, in heartbreak, in the fire of loss. And when you rise differently. Not because you're harder, but because you're more honest. You now know what peace costs, and you're no longer willing to trade it for proximity. You know the difference between attention and devotion, between longing and alignment. Your values sharpen. Your direction shifts. What once consumed you no longer even stirs you. What once felt like rejection now feels like redirection. And that's not bitterness. It's wisdom. You've stopped begging the world to love you and started loving the parts of you the world never taught you to hold. And that is how a new self is born, not from perfection, but from presence. Not from being chosen, but from finally choosing yourself. One of the most radical moments in your awakening is the day you stop pointing outward and begin looking inward. When the pain no longer becomes a story about them, but a mirror reflecting you. This isn't about blame, it's about ownership, emotional responsibility. The moment you stop asking someone else to fix what only you can heal. For most of us, love has been projection. We see not the person, but the unmet need, the unhealed wound, the childhood ache dressed up as chemistry, and when they fail to fill it, because they always will, we call it heartbreak. But the heartbreak isn't because they were wrong. It's because we expected them to carry something that was never theirs. Jung believed that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives, and we will call it fate. That's what projection is, unconscious material played out on someone else's face. We think they're abandoning us, but really we're reliving a story of abandonment we've never healed. We think they're rejecting us, but it's the self-rejection we've been carrying for years. They're not villains, they're messengers. The moment you begin to see this, really see it, is the moment everything changes. You stop chasing apologies. You stop needing closure. You stop needing someone to finally explain why they couldn't love you. Because you begin to understand they were never meant to. They were meant to awaken you. And now that you're awake, you realize that the pain wasn't asking to be fixed. It was asking to be felt. Emotional responsibility is not about shame. It's about freedom. It's the moment you take your power back from the past, from the projections, from the idea that love should rescue you. And in that clarity, you stop seeking love that soothes the wound and start cultivating love that heals it from within. You are not broken, you are becoming. And the moment you stop asking someone else to finish your story, you begin writing a new one, with truth, with awareness, and with the kind of self-love that no one can take from you again. There comes a point in your healing when the pain no longer defines you, but refines you. It stops being a weight and becomes a key, not to go back to who you were, but to unlock the version of you that only suffering could shape. This is the transformation Carl Jung spoke of when he described the wounded healer, the one who finds their power not in avoiding pain, but in transmuting it into wisdom. You don't become this healer through ease, you become it through rupture, through nights on the floor, through days you thought you wouldn't make it through. Heartbreak isn't just a personal tragedy, it's a rite of passage. It's how the heart cracks open wide enough for compassion to enter. Before, you may have offered love from expectation. Now you offer it from presence, from depth, from having been broken and remade by something real. The wounded healer archetype doesn't mean you're fixed. It means you've faced the parts of yourself others are still running from. You've walked through fire and come out with more than scars. You came out with sight, with softness that doesn't collapse, with strength that doesn't dominate, with the kind of empathy that can sit with someone else's pain without needing to fix it, because you've finally learned how to sit with your own. This is not about becoming a martyr. It's about becoming real. Heartbreak taught you what books couldn't, what comfort couldn't. It taught you what it means to listen to your soul, to feel deeply without drowning, to love without losing yourself. The pain you carried wasn't in vain. It was an initiation. And now when you speak with a voice rooted in truth. Not opinion, not defense, experience. So if you still feel the ache, remember, this is not weakness. This is your power being reshaped. The healer within you is not someone who never bleeds. It's someone who bleeds with meaning, who no longer fears pain because they've met it face to face, and survived. And now their love touches deeper, because it comes from a place only the broken ever reach. After the dust settles, after the illusions fall, the shadow is met, and the ego dissolves, something changes in you. You no longer look for someone to save you. You're no longer seduced by intensity, masquerading as intimacy. You've tasted the ache of attachment, the hunger that led you into the arms of the familiar wound, and now you want something different, not comfort, clarity, not a fairy tale, truth. This is the shift from unconscious attachment to conscious love. A love not built on need, but on overflow. You're not searching for someone to fill you, you've filled yourself. And from that place of inner fullness, love becomes something else entirely. It becomes a choice, not a craving. You no longer ask, who will complete me? Instead, you ask, who can meet me, fully, freely, honestly? Carl Jung said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. And that is conscious love. It transforms, not by fixing what's broken, but by honoring what's real. There's no more pretending, no more contorting yourself to fit into someone else's idea of love. You've outgrown survival-based connection. Now, you seek sacred resonance. You want a love that doesn't ask you to shrink, hide, or perform. A love where silence is safe, where truth is welcomed, where healing is shared, not outsourced. This kind of love is rare because it requires two awakened souls, two people who've done their inner work, two people who no longer love to escape themselves, but to expand themselves. And so you wait, not out of fear, but out of reverence, because now you know that love is not a refuge from yourself. It's where you bring your whole self, unhidden, unashamed. And until that kind of love arrives, you don't settle. You don't bend. You don't go back to the hunger that once passed for passion. You've learned the difference. You've paid the price. And now, love must rise to meet you, not as a rescue, but as a reflection of everything you've become. Heartbreak feels like an ending, and in many ways, it is. But what we rarely realize until much later is that it's also a beginning. Not the beginning of another love story, not yet, but the beginning of you. The real you, the one that was buried under compromise, shaped by fear, masked by old stories. When your heart breaks, something shatters, but what breaks is never the truth. It's the illusion. And the pieces that fall away, they were never yours to carry. The gift of heartbreak isn't in the pain. It's in the clarity that follows. It's in the space that opens when the noise stops, when the role collapses, when the dream dissolves. That space is sacred, because it's where something new can begin to grow. Authenticity, self-trust, discernment. It's where the soul speaks, not in words, but in wisdom, in presence, in the deep, quiet knowing that this pain is not punishment, it's preparation. Carl Jung said that only in the darkness can we see the light of our own consciousness, and heartbreak, more than any other experience, pushes us into that dark night. It forces us to feel, to unravel, to let go. But not to leave us broken, no, to leave us braver, to remind us who we are when there's nothing left to prove. And that is the greatest gift of all. You may not feel grateful for it yet. That's okay. You're not meant to rush this. Healing isn't linear, but someday you'll look back, not with bitterness, but with reverence. And you'll realize that break was the doorway, the rupture that made room for truth, the pain that cracked you open so something greater could pour in. So if you're still hurting, still healing, still rising, honor that. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are in the process of becoming the woman who no longer begs to be chosen, who no longer fears the silence, who no longer confuses pain with love. You are becoming the kind of soul who doesn't just survive heartbreak, but alchemizes it into awakening. And that is the secret the world rarely tells you. The universe doesn't break your heart to destroy you. It breaks it to open you, to free you, to return you to yourself. And what a beautiful return it is. Want to hear more of this? Then click on the video on the right-hand side, which is even crazier.